IRCC clearly states that the Canadian work experience means you having 1 year of work experience in Canada, paid work experience, under tier code category 0, 1, 2, 3 within the last 3 years. If you have that 1 year experience, then this is Canadian work experience. You would be eligible under CEC class even if you are outside Canada. So you could have 1 year of work experience in Canada, you could leave Canada and go away, and you would still be eligible under the Canadian experience class. Now, what happens to those people who are continuing to work in Canada but who are on a short leave? They basically go away to their home country or to any other country and start working remotely from that country. Does that still count as Canadian work experience? Well, the answer is no. The section 15 subsection 3 of the ministerial instructions which govern the express entry, that is very clearly indicated that the Canadian work experience is work experience that is performed in Canada, and therefore any work experience which is performed outside Canada, when you are out of Canada, even if you're working for a Canadian employer, even if you're being paid in Canadian dollars in a Canadian bank account, work experience outside, when being performed outside Canada, does not constitute as Canadian work experience. If it is for a longer duration, of course, you can break your work experience and show that period separately as foreign work experience, which will be absolutely fine. And the reason for this is that if you are not competing within the labor market of Canada, within the Canadian labor market, then that work experience does not constitute as Canadian work experience. On the same lines, if you are hired as a remote worker from outside Canada, you're located outside Canada, you work for a Canadian employer, then that work experience can never be Canadian work experience. It will always be foreign work experience. So therefore, when you're preparing your application, please be aware of this nuance in your application and therefore treat it accordingly. If you have had a long break in your work experience when you were outside Canada and you're performing this job for a Canadian employer, please bear in mind that this may not be calculated as Canadian experience, and therefore you might be in the danger of losing those points if you are claiming them. So how do you treat this? Do you treat this by splitting your work experience so that you remove that gap away and you show it either as foreign work experience, or you can show it in your personal history if you don't wish to claim points for that short period of time for the foreign work experience, indicating it that for this period of time, the location of your work, the country of your work was outside Canada, so that it doesn't constitute as your Canadian work experience. Now, for the period of holiday, the period of break that you have, for example, you are on a 1 month paid vacation, what happens to that? Well, as far as IRCC is concerned, they are quite discretionary as far as the paid work experience is concerned. Up to 2 weeks is absolutely considered. There is no problem because that is primarily within the Canadian market itself. You usually would get about 2 weeks of paid vacation. Anything more than 2 weeks would then have to be identified in your employment offer letter, and it would then be the discretion of the officer as to how they would treat it. In most cases, I have not seen a problem for up to 3 weeks, even 4 weeks in a lot of cases. I have not seen too much of an issue. But if you are one of those who may have an issue with something of this sort, my recommendation for you would be to always complete your work experience for a longer duration of time so that you can compensate for any periods of leave, any periods of break that you might have, so that you don't lose any points from the Canadian experience. Even when this question was presented to IRCC through the authorized representative portal account, where they usually provide some answers to these kind of questions, IRCC was very clear in stating that the work experience outside Canada cannot constitute as Canadian work experience, and that would basically be foreign work experience. The screenshot for this kind of a response is attached on your screen, so you can have a view of that as well. But this also then further emphasizes on the fact that if you're working outside Canada, then that cannot be considered as Canadian work experience. I hope this clarifies this very important and frequently asked question.